Hi, this is Alistair McMullen from Product Management here at JAGGAER, and today I'll be going through the release highlights for upcoming 19.3 release. As a reminder, you can access the release notes for this current and past releases at library.jagger.com, and this will also give you access to videos as well as the product release schedule. As you can see here highlighted in red, the 19.3 release was moved into UIT on the 21st of October and will be available in production for all customers from the 11th of November. You might have seen earlier this year that we updated the product names for the JAGGER 1 modules, and this is just a reminder that when looking at the documentation, the release notes, we will be using the new terminology, such as Total Contract Manager is now known as Contracts Plus. So what are the main improvements that we brought into the JAGGER platform overall? Well, we continue in 19.3 to invest in the user experience with a series of enhancements. You may remember in 19.2 that we had a user interface setting which would change the sidebar and header navigation layout. Well, in 19.3 we've continued to refine that, and we've also made sure that it is fully supportive of the color themes that you can brand across your site. We changed some of the menu icons to make them more consistent across the JAGGER 1 modules and JAGGER 1 solution overall. And we also streamlined or consolidated the search for documents and orders into one single menu option, Orders, where you can find everything from your requests or requisitions to your orders and invoices. In some of the screens, our new search interface is mandatory. So for example, when you're searching for requests, you'll be using the new layout, which has the ability to search and filter by the different attributes of your requests using some of our new technology. And that's obviously a lot more intuitive for the end users. We also brought in a very important feature which allows our customers to enable specific units of measurement for their organization to use, and decide for any other non-relevant units of measurement that they do not want to have those enabled and to be used. And finally, we brought in a series of system enhancements, which you can also read about in the product release documentation. In terms of the main enhancements to the e-procurement solution, we introduced the ability to search by commodity codes on the advanced shopping search. So you can search for products and services within the shopping area based on your own company commodity codes. We also introduced the ability not only to enable units of measurement at customer organization level, but also the ability to translate the unit of measurement descriptions into the different languages that JAGGER supports. We added an ability to directly link the catalog and non-catalog items to the virtual item master so that we can support integrations with ERP item masters whereby purchase orders or requisitions must be associated to a specific material or service item master. We also added the ability for administrators to delete other users' draft carts, so we don't have an excess of draft carts that are somehow still pending. We brought in an enhancement that allows us to generate a PDF for the purchase order before the purchase order is actually distributed to the supplier to support requirements where the PO must be digitally signed before it reaches the supplier. And we also included in the mobile app, as part of the quantity receipts process, the option to select the reason for return. In terms of the budget management enhancements, and this has been an ongoing development across the last couple of releases in JAGGER, we've built a brand new way to manage the full life cycle of budgets. We've introduced a series of strategic and tactical enhancements here, really to cover all of the different use cases as we see across budget management. So the first one is the ability to transfer funds to a different budget. The second one is to allow budgets to be created with amount of 0, and then you can obviously create placeholders for your budgets where you may add or transfer funds from other budgets during a subsequent moment. We have spend that is now against the budget, can be manually adjusted in case you need to make any changes that might have happened within your ERP that are not accounted for within Jagger. Spend can be collected on requisitions at the beginning of the workflow, so we ensure that your budget can be reserved as soon as the user starts to submit a requisition. And finally, organizations can configure budgets based on account code combinations. So this is what we call a wildcard feature, where you can use different combinations of your account codes in order to determine which budgets get assigned. In terms of the Jagger invoicing solution, we have a series of enhancements that came in with 19.3 that are very interesting. The first one is integration with virtual credit card payment players such as JP Morgan. This essentially generates a random one-time use credit card number which suppliers will receive as part of the purchase order that they get through the system, and will allow them to immediately charge this for the service or products that they're about to provide. And that obviously then increases security by protecting the use of credit card information further down the line, because these are one-time use credit card numbers that will only work for specific transactions with specific amounts and in specific currencies. And for the first one we've integrated, we have done this with JP Morgan Chase, and there'll be subsequent banks that we will be onboarding into our solution in the coming releases. We also introduced a new receipts workflow. So some organizations that want to have more control, particularly on the approval of receipts, to make sure that suppliers only get paid after the receipt has been formalized. And with this new receipts workflow, you'll be able to bring in all of the normal workflow features to manage your receipt process and ensure that receipts are approved based on specific rules. We also brought in a series of enhancements on the remit to address selection as it related to the legacy check request forms. And this gives us more of a tile type view when you're selecting the remit to address, and is just generally easier for the end user. So in terms of our global invoicing focused enhancements, we continue to invest in further developing the features of the accounts payable invoicing module to support e-invoicing requirements across the globe. One of the usability issues that we wanted to solve in this 19.3 release was the ability for suppliers to resubmit sales invoices which had failed in e-invoice issuance. And this could have been due to a number of reasons, depending on the integrations that we have with government systems to issue that invoice. And this ensures essentially that the supplier will receive an error message and will be able to go back into their draft sales invoice, correct it, and resubmit it for issuance. And so as part of that, we needed to make sure that we had notifications, system email alerts, as well as in-app notifications that would inform the end user, both suppliers and buyers, if the e-invoice had failed issuance, and to give them the success message if it had been correctly issued. We also brought in a feature that allows our suppliers to override the tax or VAT ID during the invoice submission if they're using, for example, a remit to address that has a diverse country, different to their main organization country, and so they need to obviously change the tax or VAT ID to be the specific one for that supplier entity in that country. We also have a new field to cover the supplier insolvency status, which is editable and configurable by country. So you can determine the insolvency status options that you have on a per country basis. And this is necessary for some countries like Italy, where it's legally required to declare your supplier insolvency status. And then finally, we brought into the e-invoice PDF that we generate a new option to declare self-billing, which is automated based on the user that is submitting or processing the invoice. So in terms of the main improvements to the supplier management solution, we brought in a new feature that allows our supplier legal structures to be conditional based on the selected country. So as we onboard or our suppliers register in JAGGAER, the list of legal structures that they can select from will be dependent or conditional based on the country that they selected. So for example, in the case of the United Kingdom, this would be a list of the official legal structures that are available for organizations or companies in the UK. This is a feature that we've brought in to make our platform more global, and we have also made sure that it's backwards compatible so that we can support ERP integrations of supplier imports or ADW rules that may have used the old legacy supplier entity names. We also brought in support for country-specific payment types, so you can configure through the back office the relationship between payment types and countries, and that's so that we can leverage specific restrictions on payment types based on the country and based on sort of the acceptable or normal payment methods that are used in that country. And finally, we brought in a series of enablement reports in the supplier portals just to give our suppliers more information, more visibility, so that they can be more self-sufficient and have access to their data. In terms of the JAGGAER sourcing solution, we are leveraging supplier performance data during event evaluations in 19.3, and we incorporated a new comparison chart in the scorecard comparison page to provide a graphic representation of the performance data. We also established the ability for the user to disqualify a supplier from the scorecard comparison page. We created links to each Supplier 360 summary page just to facilitate that navigation back and forth as you're looking at specific suppliers that you're evaluating. We established a pop-up access to the actual supplier scorecards from which the exposed data has been taken, just so you can have all the information handy. We also brought in a new event export for enhanced event evaluation. So if you wanted to take the event offline to analyze it, to manipulate it, to put in different scenarios, you have this new event export option, which will allow you to export all of the data from the different supplier bids or responses, so you can analyze that offline. And then finally, we brought in a supplier award summary report with the supplier class and diversity filters. In terms of the JAGGAER Contracts Plus solution, we brought in additional levels of conditionality that will allow you to have 5 conditional levels when creating questions. So this will give you a lot more power in terms of being able to configure visibility of question 6 based on the answers to question 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We also brought in validation on custom fields for date formats. So you can put in a specific date format for past and future dates. So it gives you more ability there to validate what the users are introducing. We brought in a feature to skip the renewal to execute it without going into workflow if you have automatic renewals configured. We brought in a reject action and status. So this gives our customers the ability to indicate that a contract has been declined and should no longer be worked on within the workflow. And we also brought in an option to bring in read-only clauses into the contract Word document. So clauses that cannot be modified, that we want to lock down on the contract. And so there's no, let's say, ability to negotiate those clauses. So that was a high-level summary of the new features coming in 19.3. We hope you have the opportunity to look at the release notes and read up more about those particular features. If you have any questions or any feedback, please sure to reach out to us. And we hope you enjoy the new 19.3 release. Thank you very much.